Isn't it beautiful when things just come together?
Time's gone inside out.
Build a beautiful website with Squarespace.
Time gets to start again.
Blog Talk Radio.
I'm your host, Dakota, and we're currently waiting on our co-host, Greg, to come in. Anyways, today's topic's going to be about the philosophy of paleontology. Sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of a delay here. Well, anyways, while we're waiting on Greg, I'll go ahead and start talking about some of our what we have on subject tonight. And basically, the philosophy of paleontology is of a science that allows us to look into the past. We have Greg on the air now. Hello, Greg.
Howdy, Doc.
Sorry that we started a little bit without you. It was unintentional, but technical difficulties and all.
I had to install a new version of Skype to actually call into the show proper.
Understandable. Well, anyways, right now, as our topic is for tonight, is the philosophy of paleontology. And as I was saying, you know, it's a science that allows us to look into the past, to see and study how our Earth was before we came around. And it goes back even further than history or archaeology. I mean, it goes back, I guess you could say, all the way to the dawn of life on our planet. And what is your take on the whole thing about paleontology? What do you think its purpose is, or its philosophy?
Philosophy of paleontology. It is the study of life forms which no longer exist, but it's important for helping us understand why things are the way they are in modern times.
Right.
It goes without saying that those who do not study the past will not know as much about what goes on now.
I have to agree, and that's one of the practical terms. I mean, you'd think, you know, paleontology is one of those sciences that's not really as important, I guess, as you could say, as medicine or engineering, maybe physics and other things like that. But I would think that it is just as important, because if that's one of the reasons why it's important, because it gives us a way of looking at how our Earth changes with time and what can affect it, like various forms of life, or how destructive an asteroid impact could be. I mean, the Cretaceous Trinitary extinction event is a good example of that. We found the crater that basically killed the dinosaurs.
That's another thing why paleontology is important. It'll can help us predict what might happen on our planet in the future.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the biggest things about science is whatever is whatever laws are enacting in nature in the past still enact today and will enact continuously into the future in the same way. And so predictability is one of the practical terms of paleontology. And the next thing in practical terms is basically it gives us a record of life. It gives us a really good, distinct look into the tree of life, Darwin's tree of life. Of course, now in modern day, we can actually take, DNA samples and do a genetics-based phylogenetic tree. But using paleontology, we have to look at fossils and basically morphology. And of course, that's why a lot of times, a lot of scientists disagree about, which animals go where or which plant species, etc. And what do you think on that?
It just makes things more interesting overall because knowledge is always changing. With new findings, things that you might believe to be true now could be turned upside down a decade down the road. There's always something new to learn, so forth.
Oh yes, and that kind of reminds me. While we're not covering it in this episode, I remember a few weeks ago they have finally made that Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus were actually, while closely related, two different genera. There for a while, they've always said, well, they're the same dinosaur, but now they are distinct and separate from one another, like what O.C. Marsh described him when he discovered them. So it just goes to show you, and then how much things can change. And of course, Spinosaurus, how its images changed a lot is another good example.
That would be a big example of a creature that's undergone a lot of changes over the past century.
Yes, and of course, this leads into the next part of the topic is how these life forms lived back in the day. And of course, the more and more fossils we find, the more and more we do learn about how these ancient animals lived, or ancient plant life, bacteria, etc. It just adds more puzzle pieces to the entire puzzle, I guess you could say. And I mean, I recall hearing about the frozen infant mammoth that they found in Siberia. I think it was Siberia, wasn't it?
It was on the Yamal Peninsula in the North Arctic.
Yeah, and now there's talk going on about trying to maybe clone a mammoth, and I mean that would be unbelievable insight to how these animals lived if we can actually have a living example. I mean, I don't think for example, Jurassic Park will happen anytime soon for dinosaurs, but it just goes to show you that we can learn a lot from modern day relatives to learn about their past relatives. But other than that, though, is there anything you'd like to add to it?
Can't really think of anything.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next topic, and that's origins. Paleontology has provided us with a lot of insight to our origins as a species, not just as a human species, but other species as well. And I think that's one of the more controversial topics is human evolution. Of course, I know that we are both hard adherents to the theory of evolution. Anyways, as for origins are concerned, with all this information we do get from fossils, builds up our heritage, our evolutionary heritage, to show that all forms of life that has ever lived on this planet and ever will live on this planet, we all came from the same place. The same forms of life that emerged 3.8 billion years ago. And basically we are part of something much bigger than ourselves, and we get a good picture of this in paleontology.
My Skype's still not updating.
Oh, so you're still having trouble?
I'm not sure if fact that we have it presently running is preventing it from updating. I don't know.
Uh-oh. Well, anyways, we're about to near the end of our topic conclusion, and before we go into the other stuff, so bear with us, folks. Like I said, we are still having technical difficulties on both ends, but we are going to try to soldier on through this show. And hopefully next time we'll have a much better show. And so now basically our topic conclusion for tonight is essentially every paleontologist has their own way of looking at this amazing story that is written in the Earth's rocks. The fossil record is, while it's never going to be complete. I mean, there are things such as erosion, and other natural forces at work that will destroy fossils, and actually fossilization in itself is a very rare thing to happen in nature. But fortunately, despite this, we have an extraordinary collection worldwide of these organisms, and new organisms are being discovered every day. And we're hoping in our news segment to share some of these new discoveries with all of you. And is there anything you'd like to add, Greg?
And that's the good thing about paleontologists. They don't all specialize in studying the same family of dinosaurs or mammals or whatnot. They specialize in their own particular field of paleontology. Some specialize in theropod dinosaurs, and even amongst that, some specialize in tyrannosaurs, and so forth. Some specialize in prehistoric sharks. Some others specialize in prehistoric mammals. So there's diversity in paleontology, many different schools of thought that go into there.
Oh, yeah. I think to give some examples, take Jack Horner and Mary Schweitzer. They're actually looking for bioorganic molecules in fossils, like the collagen proteins that were found in the T-Rex specimen known as B-Rex, and a duck-billed dinosaur by the name of I think it was called Brachipachysaurus. I think I pronounced it correctly. But yes, and I do think, it's related to Edmontosaurus. It was found in the Midwest. But anyways, I think we're getting a little off topic with that. But yes, I think, most people see that paleontologists are the people who study dinosaurs, which is true, but they study so much more. Like you said, with ancient sharks, ancient mammals, etc. And there's even some who cross over, I guess you could say, into the earliest era that archaeology looks into when we're dealing with human hominids and other things of that nature.
Well, I forgot that they cross over to other fields of science.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, paleontology in itself is sort of like the combination of geology and biology put together. So I guess you could say it's the bastard child of those two sciences. And, I think that concludes the topic for right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening, we are now taking callers. So feel free to call in, and we'll answer any of your questions or let you say whatever you want in your comment. I think we got an in-studio caller right now.
All right, so here's a question.
What's your name?
Jimmy. All right, so anyway, here's a question I'd like to pose to the two of you to discuss. You were discussing the philosophy and how the studying of how everything is related to each other. Then would that mean that you'd also subscribe to the philosophy of everything being interconnected?
I do think everything in nature is interconnected. I mean, you look at food webs, food chains, you see how subtle changes in the environment can affect entire, populations of species from plants and animals. And I think that is a very important point, that yes, everything is connected in a physical basis. What about you, Greg?
Modern science proves that all things are interconnected with one another. Even the smallest insignificant parts of the food chain affect the bigger parts of the food chain. That's the one link in the chain that causes a domino effect, which causes everything to unravel.
Which can lead to mass extinctions, and that's one reason why so many scientists today are concerned about the climate and our impact on the environment, because it is such a delicate balance. So, is there any other questions you'd like to have, Jimmy?
Can't think of any right now.
All right, we'll let you go then. We're still taking callers, but is there anyone? But I think he did bring up a good point that it is amazing that paleontology does show us, and I think we covered that in our practical terms of paleontology about the tree of life and all that, and we're all interconnected, not just to each other animals just by being related, but also to the environment as well. And like you said it best, if something small happens, it can lead to a domino effect, which in turn can lead to a mass extinction. So, I think while we're waiting on more callers to call in, we'll go ahead and cover the Paleo News segment. A new dinosaur was discovered last week, and I believe it's called S1-E1. It is a very unusual theropod dinosaur. It has a bony rod extending from its wrist, and it's believed that it supports a cell of skin on a membrane of skin on its arms. And this has been seen in, modern day bats and pterosaurs. So there is speculation as to if it could glide or fly with these skin membranes, or were they used for visual display. We're still having technical difficulties, folks, because we just lost Greg, but he'll be back on in just a moment. I'll continue from here. Next part on our Paleo News segment, there was a new dinosaur highway, as they're calling it, which a massive trackway found in British Columbia. Hundreds of prehistoric footprints have been found, most of them plant-eating dinosaurs, which just reinforces the notion that several of these animals lived in herds and possibly migrated at different times of the year. Also, in other news, a rare whale fossil was found in Panama, and it's helped clarify the evolution of sperm whales. It's a very interesting find, and you could read more about it at ScienceDaily.com. And as for the new dinosaur, it was described in the journal Nature, and more news about that at www.sciencenews.org. And the dinosaur trackway, you can learn more about it in the Huffington Post. Now we're entering our pop culture segment. New footage of Jurassic World was shown during an extended featurette video on Entertainment Tonight. It shows many exciting things going on. It's given us a little bit more about the dinosaurs being featured, especially the intimidating Indominus Rex. And we've also got to see a pretty clear picture of the animal, and I have to say it does look pretty scary. It looks like we got a caller. I guess Jimmy wants to say something again.
Now, I know some people have been making racket that the dinosaurs have not been updated properly from the previous Jurassic Park movies. What are your feelings on that matter?
Well, as for me, I would prefer if they would have updated the raptors with feathers and all, but I guess they still want to try to capture the classic Jurassic Park look. Because, whenever you think of Jurassic Park, that's usually how you would think of those dinosaurs. Without the feathers and all that. But I do think they kind of let down the tradition of Jurassic Park a little bit, because when Jurassic Park first came out, it did, it was groundbreaking because it was the first time accurate scientific discoveries were put into practice. But we've discovered a lot since the first Jurassic Park movie. And, they just have not incorporated those ideas. But like I said, I think they're trying to use the classic Jurassic Park look because that's what most people associate with Jurassic Park, is, the scaly raptors and other dinosaurs. On the other hand, there have been some paleontologists who have worked on the films, and they've voiced their disapproval. But as for my own feelings, I have mixed feelings. However, I can see both sides of the issue. We're still waiting on Greg to come back and join us. I think all the technical difficulties have gotten on his end, but so our next part in our pop culture section is Max Hawthorne's book, Cronus Rising, and this is a very excellent novel about a pilosaur, Kronosaurus, being the main antagonist of the book. It's, to put it as Chris Parker said, a fabulous debut by Max Hawthorne. Simply put, it's got teeth and big ones. And it is a very good novel, especially if you like to be scared by monsters and the like. Of course, I'm pretty sure at this moment, if Greg was on here, he would probably do a much better briefing about it. And
everyone might not know what this creature you said is. How would you describe this creature to someone who knew nothing about paleontology?
Well, a pilosaur is basically a large aquatic reptile that lived, in marine environments. It was very large body, 4 flippers, short tail, very large head with a lot of teeth. And it was approximately, if I'm not mistaken, 40 to 45 feet long, and probably weighing up to, I think, 10 metric tons, but pilosaurs are not really my specialty. However, I do know that much. And the book is currently on sale on Amazon, and I believe Max Hawthorne also runs a page on Facebook of the same name to promote his book. So please show some support and check it out. It's a really good read. Like I said, very terrifying, but if you like scares, it is definitely a book to read. And in the last part of our pop culture section, Mesozoica. This is essentially a Jurassic Park Operation Genesis-like game where you get to build your own park and maintain dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals in it. Currently, they're in a race to get 6,000 likes on Facebook, and the developers have shared their latest addition to the park, which are pachycephalosaurs. Now, these dinosaurs are plant-eating dinosaurs that are bipedal, and they're famous for their very thick, dome-shaped skulls. It is commonly believed that they used their skulls to ram each other or ram predators. Though this is in dispute, some scientists think that their dome heads are meant for social displays. I'm particular to the ramming theory, though I don't think they rammed head on hand. And now to our next segment, myth versus fact. And this one, for some reason here in the United States, this one is very prevalent. And it is that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. This is false. Dinosaurs and the earliest ancestors of humans are separated by at least 60 million years of time. And the only dinosaurs humans have ever coexisted with are modern-day birds. So, basically, the Flintstones did not happen. There were no humans around when the big dinosaurs roamed. And Greg is going to be doing this section, but it's our paleofauna of the week. and currently he's experiencing some difficulties, so I'm going to take over for him unless he can come back online for us. Today's paleofauna is called Quinacana fortiostrum. It is a crocodilian from Australia. It lived about 24 million years ago to about 40,000 years ago. And it was about 6 meters long. It was a very big and mean crocodilian, and it lived primarily on land. Unlike most crocodilians, it actually, I think, ventured out into land and hunted wild game such as ancient kangaroos, and it also probably got into fights with the large lizard known as Megalania. So that is our paleofauna of the week. And then on to our next segment, prehistoric matchup. This is basically a segment where we are going to pair up two prehistoric animals and essentially do a death battle with them. I hope Screw Attack does not sue us. Anyways, tonight's matchup is Smilodon versus the American Lion. And we have an artist spotlight today, Leogon of DeviantArt. He produced these impressive images for us on our slideshow. You can check out his gallery at legion.deviantart.com to see some of his impressive paleo art. And to give you some stats and all that, Smilodon, also known as a saber-toothed cat, weighed around 200 to 400 kilograms. Its height was about 1.2 meters at the shoulder, and its length was 2 meters in length. Our stats here for Smilodon is body size 10, strength 10, explosiveness 10, killing power 10, agility and speed 6, grappling force 10, bite force 5, defense 7, intelligence 6, and stamina 7. This artwork that is featured on our slideshow is also provided by Leogon. As for the American lion, its scientific name is Panthera L. atrox. It weighed around 351 kilograms. Its height was also 1.2 meters, and it was about 1.6 to 2.5 meters in length. Its body size was 10, strength 8, explosiveness 8, killing power 8, agility and speed 8, grappling force 7, bite force 10, defense 9, intelligence 10, stamina 9. Now, we'd like everyone to call in or put in our comments on our Facebook page about which animal do you think would win in a head-on-head fight. I am betting on the I'm betting on the American lion myself, for it has higher intelligence and it seems to be a little bit well-rounded, and it definitely has a stronger bite force than Smilodon. I'm going to try to see if I can get a hold of Greg. We're still trying to get reconnected with Greg at the moment, so hopefully he can voice his input on all the segments we have covered. We're still having trouble getting in touch with Greg, so hold on one moment. Greg, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm sorry I've covered your segments without you. Just trying to keep the show going.
I can't see the slides on my end.
Oh. Having trouble with the slides?
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to watch them.
They're supposed to be on the site, but anyways, I think we have...
Yeah, I was going to offer my possible verdict on the Smilodon American Lion fight.
Okay, then. We're all listening.
Alright, for starters, the advantages that Smilodon has over the American Lion, they include greater physical strength owing to its more forelimbs, massive forelimbs, superior
I've noticed from the pictures that the Smilodon is also massively built, unlike the lion. They're about the same size, but one's more muscular than the other, like you said.
This is Smilodon popular, the largest Smilodon species, which could get up to 880 pounds at an upper end. The American lion topping off like maybe 100 pounds less than that.
Right. And what do you think the advantages the American lion brings up to the table? I think, like I said earlier, it is well-rounded, and it definitely has higher intelligence. And if it is like modern lions, it probably hunts more so in prides, or packs, rather. I don't know.
Some things I have read indicate that the American lion may have acted more like a tiger, may have been more solitary than modern lions.
So kind of like the modern day
fossil
mountain.
finds.
Yes.
Okay, so like modern day mountain.
Different group of cats altogether, though. But yes, like I said, I think it's going to be a very good fight, and I'm hoping to hear from from our listeners about who they think will win the fight. I think that both of our opponents are very well-rounded, and I think it's just a matter of, is it brains versus bronze?
And an example to support the American lion being smarter would be in the La Brea tar pits.
Right. I do understand that in the La Brea tar pits they have a lot more Smilodon remains than American lion.
Which could have indicated that the lions may have been smart enough to avoid the traps most of the time.
Right. I would imagine that probably one prey animal got stuck in there, and as it was dying, some other predatory animals were trying to take advantage of that, but they got stuck in the pit as well. So essentially, it was a classic example of what they call a predator trap.
Predator trap. As soon as like a mammoth or bison falls into the tar pit and dies, it becomes an inviting food source for predators.
Right.
They start getting stuck, and the cycle just goes on and on and on for 10,000 years.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, but is it possible that the reason why there are fewer the American lions in the tar pits could be due to smaller population size in the given area of the American tar pit?
It could be possible. I believe that the American lion's range was throughout North America, and the Smilodon was found from North America to South America. What are your thoughts on there, Greg?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not done enough exhaustive research to indicate the population size for panther and atrox throughout the country, but it's likely that there were probably maybe slightly less numbers than Smilodon.
It's possible. So, and then again, we are dealing with fossils, so we probably never get an accurate number of how common they were, but it would seem reasonable that Smilodon probably did outnumber the American lion. Okay. Oh, and Greg, since you're on here now, would you like to speak about the crocodilian in our Paleofauna of the Week?
Oh, quick cannon?
Yes.
Okay.
We might as well take advantage of this before everything before technical difficulties come back.
Right, sure. Now that I understand how the PowerPoint thing works, just click on the page, and go to the next one. Alright, as I was about to say here, Quincana is an extinct genus of Megacephalian crocodilian that lived on Earth for about 24 million to about 14,000 years ago. Like the Pleistocene, it had become one of the top terrestrial predators of Australia, possessing long legs and zygothon teeth, which is a scientific term for serrated teeth. So this crocodile had teeth more in common with a theropod dinosaur than with a modern-day croc, which has a straight-up pointed tooth for grabbing onto prey.
So So it had a typical theropod dinosaur sort of musculature on its skull as well as the teeth shape. So would this be like comparable to a tyrannosaur or a carnosaur in its teeth shape?
I would probably have to compare it more to an Allosaurus.
So
like a steak knife type of tooth.
Okay, so it's basically a carnosaur. And to give everyone a quick look at what a carnosaurus tooth is like. It's very flat, blade-like, and serrated, just like a steak knife, as Greg just mentioned. It's not the deadly bananas-shaped teeth of T-Rex or other tyrannosaurs. So very blade-like, cut with serrations. So this thing would basically grab onto its prey and basically really cut into it really well, right?
It would do that, and they were a terrestrial species, the crocodiles.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned earlier, and I was hoping I got that right, so I'm relieved that I had reported that accurately, that it was a terrestrial crocodile. And I noticed in the artwork that it has very long legs for a crocodilian. So it probably was a very fast runner for a crocodile, I suspect.
Very likely it was. I'll have to do some more research on it, but going to Wikipedia here, there were four species contained within the Quincana genus. The type species featured here, Quincana Forterostrum,
Yeah.
Pleistocene, Queensland. Quincana barbara from the early Pleistocene in Queensland. Quincana temera from the middle Miocene in the Northern Territory, and Quincana baboni from the Oligocene of Queensland.
So there were four species within this genus.
The older species were smaller size, about 10 feet long, compared to the larger Pleistocene species, which evolved.
Right, and so this suggests, evolutionary trend that they got basically bigger to be more strength, more muscle, probably to also gain more solar energy from the sun. Since I would suspect, like modern crocodilians, they are probably ectothermic.
The Quincana Forterostrum, as mentioned, may have reached up to 20 feet in length, making it one of the largest box bears, second only to the giant monitor, Mechalania.
Yeah, I mentioned that they probably could have went head-on-head, and I think that's going to be our next week's prehistoric matchup, Quincana versus Mechalania. But we'll get to that next week.
And other members of Quincana's family and Sultamecasuchinae include Australosuchus, Baru, Canberra, Megasuchus, Halonarchus, and Trilophosuchus.
Those are a mouthful. But anyways, I think we've pretty much covered. Also, while you were out, we also covered a little bit on the pop culture segments, and is there anything you'd like to say on our topics there about Jurassic World, Cronus Rises, or Mesozoica?
I didn't even get to hear. I didn't even hear the audio for it at all.
Oh, so Tag, you're it. If you'd like to say a few things about the topics there.
All right, for pop culture book recommendation, we have here tonight Max Hawthorne's best-selling marine terror novel, Cronus Rising.
And as I mentioned, it was a very terrifying read, but it was so enjoyable. And I gave a mention I explained what a pilosaur was and what Kronosaurus was. And since you probably didn't get to hear it, would you like to reiterate it?
Reiterate it. I'll give a plot synopsis here before going into what the creature is and so forth.
Okay then, all right.
After 65 million years, the world's greatest predator is back. Devastated by his wife's tragic journey, Olympic hopeful Jake Braddock turns his back on fame and fortune and retreats to the quiet coastal community of Paradise Cove, Florida. He accepts the job of town sheriff, hoping to find the peace and obscurity he so desperately craves, trying to anything but. A series of mysterious disappearances and horrifying deaths send a flood of panic through the idyllic town. In the life of the ravaged carcass of a full-grown whale serpent is over that the real terror begins. So Jake finds himself drawn into an ancient mystery, a mystery enters him, and drifts deep, battling for survival against the deadliest predator the world has ever seen. It is a creature who And the titular creature is an evolved descendant of Kronosaurus queenslandicus, dubbed Kronosaurus imperator.
Right. So essentially, it's a descendant of Kronosaurus. All right. That was one fact that I forgot to mention when I went over it earlier, but thank you for giving a much more detailed look. And so any thoughts about Jimmy in here in the studio? He asked, a little bit about the, issue dealing with Jurassic World, and how the dinosaurs are still, scaly and that sort of thing. And he asked my opinion about it, and I said, well, I got sort of a mixed opinion. I kind of see that, it is kind of a disappointment, but at the same time I see that they want to go with the classic Jurassic Park look, and I was wanting to know, what is your stance on it?
It is a movie after all. It is a movie after all, and there are a lot of fans that wouldn't want to see things get changed too much.
So you think it's just more a matter of popular opinion as opposed to the scientific aspect of it?
Yeah, so like that, and the fact that these are genetically reconstructed dinosaurs, it would confuse a lot of people if all of a sudden all the dinosaurs started to look more like they actually are depicted in current artwork.
Yeah, and so I guess you would be sort of in the same boat as I am with the mixed feelings, but what would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, in Mesozoica, is a game similar to Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, and they have recently started their race to get 6,000 likes on Facebook, as well as the development team has actually introduced a new group of dinosaurs, Pachycephalosaurs, and they gave a brief description of those kind of animals to our listeners. And lastly, I had already went over the myth versus fact, which is, humans and dinosaurs did not coexist. And I mentioned how, for some reason, here in the United States, it's sort of prevalent that people think that back billions of years ago, it was like the Flintstones or something. But other than that, though, I think at this point, we're probably going to end the show a little short. We've got 15 minutes left on the clock. So let's do a brief recap of everything we have went over.
Max just tuned into the show.
Oh, he did? Well, we'll get him on here. So Max Hawthorne, the author of Cronus Rises, has just tuned into our show, and hopefully he'll be wanting to call in soon.
It'll make the discussion more lively.
Something I'd like to propose to you on the myth versus fact. Obviously, it probably got really popular because of the Flintstones. However, I have heard, I had a friend who was Native American who did tell me that in their culture there were myths of these certain places that the Native Americans would go and they would run into these large dinosaur-like creatures. Would you think that that would be the origin, perhaps, of where this idea of dinosaurs and humans coexisting comes from?
Well, I think that one would be more related to the dragging myth of, various cultures from Asia, Europe, Africa. I mean, just about everywhere there is sort of the dragon myth. But it is possible that ancient people saw dinosaur fossils and probably made up stories to explain what kind of animals these were. And a lot of times, take like with St. George and the Dragon, when he was out in Africa, he actually killed what is believed to be a large monitor lizard, which is a relative of the Komodo dragon today. And, some people just picked up the story and sort of exaggerated it. But as for, the whole idea with dinosaurs and humans coexisting, I think that could date back in the modern sense, date back to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's book, The Lost World, which was published in 1912. and it was made into a silent film in 1925. And we have a call now. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, this is Matt.
Hello, Max. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to Prehistory Travelers Guide, Mr. Hawthorne.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not sure who I'm talking to be honest. It took me a while to figure out how to log on and everything.
It's understandable. I'm Dakota, and of course, Greg is the other guy.
I'm the one with.
And we
We've
have
spoken on Facebook then.
Yes. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, I'm the one with the headset. I've been having my own research difficulties trying to get connected and all that.
Yeah. Like I said, late with this episode and all that, we're having some technical issues, Max. And but thank you for coming on to the show.
It's no problem. I have a few minutes.
It's an honor to have you on here.
Well, it's an honor to be here.
All right. We gave a bit of a review of your book, a little bit of an introduction to promote it and all that. I have to say it is an excellent book, and not to give anything away, but there's a certain section on page 170, and me and Greg had mentioned before the show went on air how that particular page would be perfect for a movie trailer. I believe it is the third paragraph down. And I'm trying to be discreet about this so that way I don't give away any information to the people who have not read it yet.
Well, Dakota, is it like one of the Cretaceous flashback scenes?
No, I believe it is where someone is about to be attacked.
Well, that could
it
be.
Is,
yeah, that's half the book. There's a pretty high body count in Cronus Rising.
Yes, there is.
I think it was the senator's son that got attacked by the Cronus Rising creature. Yes.
Yes. Is that the scene we're talking about?
Yeah, I believe it starts off with a guy named Brad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very popular.
And yes.
At least he thinks he is.
But
really unlikable character that you want us to get eaten by the monster. This is the scene where he gets his comeuppance.
Yes, and it is very satisfying as a scene to see him axed off. But like I said, I'm trying to keep this discreet so that way we don't give away too many spoilers to our listeners. But
well, Brad's scene has. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Mac. I'm sorry, I'm being rude.
Well, Brad's scene has been worked into the screenplay already.
Oh.
It's a little different than it is in the novel because obviously you're trying to cram, 200,000 words into a 2-hour motion picture. So it's necessary to I wouldn't say you go give somebody the Cliff Notes version or something, but you have to be very succinct in what you do and show, etc. But any way you slice it, he is an unlikable guy, and justice is served. Let's just put it that way.
I think that is a very good way of describing it, and honestly, I understand how you have to cut down a lot of stuff when you are making a book into a movie. What comes to mind for me is Jurassic Park. When they had another entire subplot of animals escaping the island, and they didn't even really mention that in the movie. But
yeah, you physically can't do that.
Right. So, anyways, I believe we got 10 minutes left. Right. We do have 10 minutes on the clock, but we'll keep you on the air if you would like, Max, unless you have something else to do or whatever.
No, I could stay on for 10 minutes. That's not a problem.
Okay. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions about the book and all that?
No, bring it on.
Okay. So when you were initially writing this book, were you thinking about what inspired you to use the Kronosaurus as the antagonist of the book?
Well, the pliosaur is kind of like the animal in Moby Dick, like the sperm whale. It's not purely the protagonist. I mean, it is this force of nature that is omnipresent throughout the story. And it is the reason people want to read the book. And it's great to be able to breathe life into an animal like that. But at the same time, the human element and the assorted antagonists, the bipedal ones that are worked into the story, turn out to be, if you think about it, the more monstrous of the bunch as compared to this reptile. It's just an animal doing what any other animal does to want to survive. I mean, it has a rudimentary intellect, almost like a dog or something like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's not out to take over the stock market, have somebody's career destroyed, you know, have somebody assassinated for political gain or anything like that. You know, this is a force of nature, I would say. In terms of...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Dakota. There's some sort of feedback, so what I'm saying is kind of delayed. I can hear it in the background or something.
Right. I think this is part of their technical difficulties.
But you're asking me why I chose that particular animal?
Yes, I was curious as to, you know, I mean, there's a lot of animals to choose from especially from the prehistoric eras.
Well, obviously, Cronus Rising has been inspired by works that have come before it, such as Moby Dick, obviously, Jaws, of course, Beast by Peter Benchley. You know, these are the type of Michael Crichton's work. You know, these are the type of gods, and I will call them that have, you know, the work is out there that obviously has an effect on any writer, whether you're doing a novel or a screenplay. I picked the pliosaur because, first of all, my dad's a rock hound, so I grew up, ever since I was a child, surrounded by fossils and minerals. I mean, they were in the house. You know, I told a story in an interview how when I was like 8 years old, there were the bones of a juvenile mammoth sitting on top of our piano. And they were pretty big for, you know, it was a juvenile, but they were, as a child, they were enormous. So I was exposed to a lot of, you know, artwork, paleo art, et cetera, growing up. But I remember, like, certain things, like there was a painting I saw from Dinotopia that had a Kronosaurus or a group of them towing a submarine or something, you know, things like that. And you realize that this is a much larger, more powerful animal than, say, a great white shark or something like that. And at the same time, though, I feel like reptiles have a more, I don't want to say villainous personality or image, you know, but they have more personality. You know, if you look at a shark, like a great white, for example, you know, the line from Jaws, like a doll's eyes, black eyes, they don't seem human, or live until they bite you and all that stuff. And that's true. Yeah. But the great white shark doesn't have any expression. And if you look into those eyes, it's like a black hole, which is scary. But
and
if
for
you
us
had
humans, you know, we have to rely a lot on expressions and whatnot.
And if you see something like a crocodile, you know, if you go to a zoo, an aquarium, or God forbid you're swimming and a 20-foot saltwater crocodile surfaces next to you and looks at you, and you look into those eyes, you know, it just has this expression. And I'm sure the smile doesn't hurt either, but it really looks like some sort of malevolent entity is just looking back at you, engaging you, and deciding, do I want to eat him, don't I? It's a more fearsome animal. So by taking that type of persona and adapting it to something that's also sort of like an enormous cetacean with an attitude and powerful jaws, you're able to create this primeval force that comes across as more terrifying than a big shark or a whale or, you know, something like that. So that was my initial reason for choosing that particular animal. And lots of things that were in the news back then. I mean, Cronus Rising was actually written 10 years ago. A lot of people don't know that. It was put on the back burner for me, you know, for a lot of reasons, and it only came out recently. So at the time, there was a lot of stuff going on with walking with dinosaurs and research coming to light on the monster of Arambury and different things like that. And all these discoveries loan themselves to the possibility that these pliosaurs were actually the largest and most dangerous marine predators of all time. So why wouldn't you want to build a story around that?
True. And my last question, and this is related to our topic of our episode tonight, is the philosophy of paleontology. And from what I understand, what you just mentioned, that your dad was a rock hound, and so you grew up around a lot of paleontological studies and fossils and such. What is your take on the philosophy of paleontology? I see it personally as a grand ticket to an ancient show, a play that is dynamic as it is still today.
Well, in terms of my personal philosophy, and it's an interesting question because I've never been asked something like that before. For me, it's almost like a limitless menagerie. You have all of history at your fingertips, and so much out there, so many undiscovered species waiting to be brought to light and learning about the Earth's history. I mean, I'm in my office right now, and I'm looking at one of the largest cave bear skulls in the world, and an enormous trilobite, and a huge stegodon molder. I've got I'm surrounded. I work at a museum, so it just, for me, it's a combination of discovery and the fact that the Earth was and can be again so much more interesting than it is now. I mean, we've wiped out a lot of life in our oceans. I mean, if the human race continues the way it's going, then we're going to have to start cloning most of our animals just to make up for the damage we've done. And as for new species evolving, it's going to kind of difficult when you occupy most of the inhabitable planet and consume all its resources. And that sounds like I'm like a human hater, but it's more a realization when you think of everything that came before, through the Triassic and the Jurassic and the Cretaceous and everything like that. All these wondrous creatures that are all gone. Now, granted, some of them died out because they couldn't adapt. Some of them died out because an asteroid the size of Manhattan smacked into the planet. But all these creatures existed in a balance with nature, and they are just wonders to behold, or would be. So for me, trying to breathe life into them in the novels that I write, I guess it's a responsibility, but it's something that you try and live up to. I can't be I've been criticized in the past by a few people who feel that my pliosaur, for example, is not scientifically accurate according to paleontology.
But you're also trying to be an artist as well as a writer. You're trying to give this animal a bit more dimension. And as a paleo artist myself, I understand that. You may have to do something. No, go ahead, Dakota.
I'm sorry.
Ahead.
No. You first. I'm a guest.
All right. As I was saying, you have to take in a little bit more dimension with the animals. You may have to do something that's not entirely accurate, but makes a very visually or, basically aesthetically pleasing animal. And unfortunately, we have 10 seconds left, so I'm going to have to unfortunately cut you off, Max.
It's perfectly fine.
I would like to say thank you, everyone, for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.
Good night and good luck.
All right.
The next time you need auto parts and accessories, trust the parts professionals at the 96 Atlanta area O'Reilly Auto Parts stores. Our professional parts people know what it takes to get the job done right. Professionals have counted on O'Reilly Auto Parts for decades. Now you can too. Professional parts people, O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.